Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and today we are talking about Superman. That's right, just Superman, not Legacy. I'm still getting used to the new title, but more importantly, we're talking about Wendell Pierce. He's of The Wire fame, Jack Ryan. I really, loved him in Jack Ryan most recently in Amazon Prime, and but he's done a lot of stuff. The Wire is really where a lot of people probably recognize him from, and he's now been cast in the role of Perry White in the new Superman movie. That is, and so today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a good choice, bad choice, how it kind of fits into the rest of the mix. The cast that they've already put together. James Gunn has done a fantastic job of bringing in so many talented actors to on board this team. Of course, they've got a lot of talent behind the camera, so we will talk about how Wendell Pierce can now kind of fit into this larger picture, and then of course we will go from there. We'll dive into what this means for the movie itself. We'll compare to previous iterations of Perry White as well, and then I'm sure we'll go off into some other tangents as we usually do. So to do that and so much more, of course, as always, I'm joined by John. How are you doing today, John?
Pretty good. Yeah, this is definitely, exciting news. Always good to get a good get a casting, especially now that shooting is underway, so we still are kind of getting stuff. So that's definitely exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something. It this is one of those bigger characters. I mean, okay, I guess it depends on how much of a role Perry White will have in this movie, right? Because when I think Perry White, the one iteration that sticks in my mind is Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White
Hmm.
from Man of Steel,
Definitely.
and he factored quite heavily into that movie. Like he was a pretty big part of that film, and throughout that film, he sort of serves as like not the everyman's perspective. Then maybe he definitely gives you like some wisdom throughout the movie, because when you start out like with Amy Adams's Lois Lane doing that whole investigation to try to figure out who this man is, that we eventually find out is Superman, Clark Kent, and all. She's just very eager to get this news out into the world, and this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then Perry White is the one who's sort of there to kind of caution her and be like, look, if this is indeed like not just fairy tales and just myths and legends, then this guy's real, then can you imagine how this changes the world? I mean, that was a big theme in the movie Man of Steel, like this alien that who's now on Earth, who's got these superpowers, who can change the world, and then they kind of double down on that in Batman v Superman. But
Yep.
I think Lawrence Fishburne does a great job of giving a very grounded performance that gave that movie a lot of context, but also it grounded the movie itself in a sense of reality that might have been otherwise harder to relate to, because you are still seeing a lot of these Kryptonians like cause destruction on such a massive scale that they then had to like bend over backwards to be like, no, the downtown areas are clear. There's no civilians there. In the second movie, and it became a big cultural thing. Like, look at how many people Superman killed at the end of Man of Steel. Anyway, so when you look at Lawrence Fishburne's iteration, you compare that to the iteration from the 1978 movie. Of course, over time, it seems like the way we relate to the character of Perry White has changed. I think they purposefully went in a very different direction with Man of Steel. So now that you have somebody like a Wendell Pierce come to the picture, of course, he's been typecast almost in a lot of these, police procedural, legal drama kind of roles over the years. Jack Ryan isn't a great example. Like, right there, the picture on Amazon Prime, he was, in the spy business. Now he steps into a role that is kind of in the same realm, as the lead editor at the Daily Planet. What are your thoughts about Wendell Pierce, his fit in the role, and then putting that in context with these other actors that have taken on the role in the past, both recent past and distant past?
I think it's a good choice. I haven't seen a ton of him. I haven't watched Jack Ryan or The Wire. The most I've seen of him was that movie Horrible Bosses way back when he was a detective, as he kind of is in a lot of his projects, as you mentioned. But I have seen clips of him. Like I know my parents watched Jack Ryan, and I watched a little bit of that when I was in the room with them watching it, and he was good. Kind of has that like kind of stoic kind of personality of like kind of no bullshit that's Perry White can be. As I mean, Lawrence Fishburne was excellent in Man of Steel. I feel they kind of ruined him in BVS a little bit. He kind of, I don't want to say became like a J. Jonah Jameson parody, but he kind of leaned into that and became more of like a caricature, which I didn't really like. And I feel like, I don't know, it just didn't work. Man of Steel, he was like, he felt more like an everyman, and that I really liked that. And I think Wendell Pierce, from what little I've seen of him, I think it's a good choice. I think he's pretty talented. He's done a lot of great work. He kind of has like the body for it, and kind of has the just the face for it. He's just like a face of a man who's like seen a lot of shit, and he's
100%.
like
I mean, he
seen
probably
seen this
has.
before. He's like seen everything before, so he kind of has that like, I've seen everything. I've been around the block, and but like he's a guy who's seen everything, but like can like, because of that, has the experience to like offer his experiences, like not make those same mistakes and that kind of thing, like be a good mentor like that Perry White can be in some iterations. And I feel like that can definitely work, and I like that as well. So I feel like I feel like he's a really good choice. From what little I've seen of him, I can't like comment on his like entire career or anything like that, but from what little I've seen of him, I think he can definitely pull off the role, and I think he can like kind of follow into what Fishburne was kind of initially doing with the character, and I really like that. I think he'll knock it out of the park, like with most of the cast. I mean, it seems like the casting is pitch perfect here, so I'm excited for what he has to what how he'll do the character, and what we have in store for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is a story that at this point, it's not breaking news. This broke a few days ago, and so I'm sure you've already seen a bunch of news outlets covering it. Of course, the Hollywood Reporter broke it originally, so we now have somebody who's gonna be that head lead figure at the Daily Planet, which is probably gonna figure in a pretty significant way in a Superman movie, as it was in the 1978 version, Man of Steel. Perry White is the person that both Clark Kent and Lois Lane report to at the Daily Planet. And as you mentioned, Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White did a great job of really giving you a different perspective on what was going on in the movie, especially with regard to like who the character of Superman is, what he means
Definitely.
to even exist in the world. I mean, of course, the world of Man of Steel was a world where there wasn't really a lot of any super characters at the time, at least. You're meant to believe that, even somebody like a Wonder Woman hasn't existed, or Batman, or if they did exist, they were more legends than they were like well known, in the world of that movie. So Superman becomes this first true meta human that they come across, a world changing meta, and then of course the events of the movie take place and all that. Now, Wendell Pierce's version of Perry White is going to be coming into a world where metahumans exist. There's a Green Lantern. There's or some iteration of the Terrifics. You're gonna have maybe some history of a Justice Society having existed. You have characters from the Authority, like the Engineer, who's going to be running around. We're also going to have a Lex Luthor there. So the next question for you is how does he figure into this? What iteration of the character? Because again, like Lawrence Fishburne's Man of Steel had a very particular role in that movie, and I think like when we got to BVS, his role was shrunk down to the point where, like he said, he was almost a caricature. I mean, I personally thought they really did him dirty in that movie because not only did they cut down the amount of time that he was on screen, they also kind of made him seem very one dimensional. Now,
Crime
what I
wave
worry
in Gotham. Meanwhile,
right?
water. What, like, that was such a
It
ridiculous
was
scene.
so
I'm
bad.
like, really?
I
That's the take you went. Okay, okay, that's
right. To the point where I was wondering maybe that was one of the scenes that Zack Snyder didn't film. I mean, although like yeah, it's clear that that movie wasn't the one where they took scenes that another director shot, right? But like in
yeah.
hindsight, I'd like to imagine as a fan of Zack Snyder's work in DC, I'd like to imagine that wasn't one of the things that he shot. But
That was by a
of course,
second unit guy. That's what it
yeah, yeah.
was.
Maybe it was just one of those days, and Snyder was like, you know what, we'll leave it in there. Maybe the studios let. I like to believe that to be true, but anyway, yeah. So I guess where I'm heading with this is in this world of Superman. we're gonna have a ton of characters. I mean, this movie itself is stacked. Like we keep referencing to that big picture. Where's the picture? I always keep that's the crest. That's something different. I'm gonna have to find this picture. There we go. Nope, Batman Beyond. I'm gonna look for this picture and find it eventually, of the whole cast. But where do you think Perry White fits into this? Are we gonna get like that very truncated, you know, crime wave in Gotham, water wet version of Perry White? Or are we gonna like the version that you get at the end of Man of Steel is like, can you imagine like if what you have here, like if this man truly exists and how much it would change the world? Basically, having the very similar perspective to Pa Kent, the Kevin Costner Pa Kent, what he
Yeah,
thought about his son Clark when he was younger, and then he was like, but you have to decide what kind of man you want to be, Clark, and whether he's good or bad, that man's going to change the world. Like, still goosebumps. Like, some of the stuff in Man of Steel is so like it's some of the best stuff in all of superhero movie history. But you don't I don't know if you're gonna get that here. I mean, because there's some of that comes from the movie just wanted to be very grounded and much more toned down. Do you feel like this version of Perry White is gonna play it up more? Like, is it, or are we gonna get something? Because going by the casting, obviously, at least visually, they're going with a similar look. I mean, historically, the character of Perry White has been, Caucasian with Lawrence Fishburne's iteration, and now we're. It seems like we're sticking in that direction. Not a
hmm
race thing at all. It's kind of like with Nick Fury. Sam Jackson, played the role, became iconic, and then all of a sudden, Marvel Comics started to draw Nick Fury very differently than what historically had been the case. And in
yeah,
this here, it looks like James Gunn is like continuing on with not bringing Lawrence Fishburne back, but bringing in somebody else who's just as talented and probably more, definitely more than willing, more than capable of taking on the role.
yeah.
So, how do you feel he's going to figure into this picture? Because we have already got so many people in this movie. Does he even have like more than a
I
few lines and a few
I
scenes
feel
to be
like
a part of?
what they might do, they might go with like a kind of a cynical Perry White, like kind of like someone who's like kind of, I wouldn't want to say done with it all, but like kind of like a guy, again, a guy who's seen a lot, and he's like, when I started in this business, we were reporting on like racketeering and fucking, like corrupt CEOs, all this other shit. That's the stuff we reported on. Now we're reporting on guys falling from the sky, guys flying through the sky, punching things with giant green baseball bats. Like, it's like
Yeah,
that's like, and I don't want to say like a guy who's like, I don't think they'll go with like a boomer quote unquote thing where it's like, this isn't the
he's out of
world.
touch
It's
kind of
just like
thing,
the
yeah.
guy who's like just kind of like confused by it. Not, I wouldn't say confused, but like a guy who's like, I don't know what to think anymore. Like, how do I factor in this? What can I do? Sort of thing. What can I say? I'm just a guy. Like, sort of that reaction that in some superhero mated like humans kind of like being like, well, what are we, kind of thing. Like, we have these people that are like,
There's a wisdom to
what
that,
what
like
what we can like,
yes,
what we perceive as gods, like
right.
Superman is like this god-like figure type of thing, and then it kind of, we as humans, where it's like, well, what are we now? Are we like now like the prior stage of evolution, and this is who's gonna like, inherit the earth, kind of thing? They might play that with him, like he's sort of like, kind of like how Lawrence Fishburne was kind of being that Paul Kent, but in like the modern day and with someone else, like, oh, the alien reaction. Perry White might be like, well, what role do we play? Kind of writing that line of like, well, I'm still gonna play the role the best I've known and be the best I can be and just do what I do best. But now I just got to get used to this brave new world we're in with these super beings running around. So I feel like that's kind of a good way to take it. They could caricature him. I mean, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't say it was bad, depending on how they do it, but I just feel like that could be like a good way of like a guy who's, especially when it seems like the thing they're aiming for is, if like the rumor mill is anything to go by, that it'll take inspiration from Kingdom Come, how instead of Superman coming out of retirement to tell off all these edgy anti-heroes, he's gonna come out into the limelight. He'll be like kind of famous, and then he'll become more famous when he's like, okay, like fucking murdering people in cold blood, being an asshole, not caring about people, not caring about civilians. That's not the way to do it anymore. We gotta have hope. We can't rely on, hatred of others, killing others, violence. We gotta, be the best we can possibly be. And I feel like that if that could be the way to go, like maybe that Perry White kind of feeds into that as well. Um, where
Yeah.
he's like, well, um kind of riding that line of like, okay, like kind of adding into the deriding like anti-hero sort of stuff, like maybe he's
Yeah.
for this Superman, like being like, maybe we can bring it back, like sort of that quote unquote golden age of like when people cared about their neighbors kind of thing.
Mhm.
And he could definitely like maybe relate to that in some way. I think that could also be a good way to take it.
I mean, look,
um
for me, for me, like the version of Perry White that I want like Wendell Pierce to play is kind of similar to the character that he plays in Jack Ryan. Like you're seeing the picture on screen. The character he plays in Jack Ryan is pretty much this grizzled veteran who has been around and like he was basically the station chief in Moscow for a long time. So if you see that on his resume, you're like, this dude probably knows a thing or two about the job. And from season 1 all the way to the end of that show, which I think ran for 3 or 4 seasons, if I'm correct.
yeah, 3 seasons.
Um, 4 seasons, yeah, and, you of course, you have John Krasinski in the role of Jack Ryan. I think he did fantastic, but Wendell Pierce's character, who I'm forgetting the name of his character, but he basically plays a mentor to Jack Ryan, and by the time you get to the final, season, I think they all kinda the 2 of them collectively move up the ranks at the CIA, and along the way, they always kinda play off this relationship where, like, he doesn't want to kinda take us like, he doesn't wanna just, you know, be signing off, paperwork and be like a desk
Hmm.
jockey. Like, even though that seems to be where other people in this above him in the CIA want to put him at times because he seems to be the kind of guy who goes and gets the job done because he knows how to do it. He doesn't want to sit around and go through a lot of red tape. So I
Right.
kind of like that sort of a grizzled veteran who's got a veteran savvy to him. Basically, that's how I would refer to it. He's going to bring a different kind, and that's what Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White did. He knew it's he seemed you very much got the sense that version of Perry White worked his way up from maybe an intern all the way up to being, the editor in chief at the Daily Planet. And so he knew what being put on a beat felt like. And I think they tried to convey that a little more in BVS, but ultimately it came across as pretty tone deaf with the whole crime wave in Gotham, water wet. But I think they were what they were going for. At least that's what I like to think they were going for. Is more like, hey, I've been around the block a few times. Clark, you should not chase this story. It's going to lead you nowhere. You're better off covering this other stuff because he
Yeah.
was, in a way, he was looking after Clark's career in a sense, right? Like he doesn't want him to be going after digging up, what's the phrase? Digging up skeletons in a closet that he doesn't want to look inside. But of course, I mean, they've always kind of hinted in that in the DCEU that Perry White, because at the end of Man of Steel, it's almost like Perry White knows that Clark Kent is Superman, but they never. They always sort of are like, let's just keep plausible deniability in there. So I didn't know how to kind of like look at those sequences in BVS, and
Yeah.
maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't know. But at the end of the day, it felt like he was a father figure to Lois Lane and Clark Kent in a manner of speaking,
Yeah, I do
as
like
well
that
as
as
the other
well. Yeah.
employees. And I think that
Mhm.
aspect of the character has to come through because, like you said, like we don't want to get a J. Jonah Jameson esque version of the character, which so far in the MCU feels like I mean, they've been reinvented him in a very timely manner, like in terms of like for the today. But I do miss part of the J. Jonah Jameson where he was, you know, a guy that you wouldn't necessarily want to hang out with for too long. If you went to the bar, you're like maybe a couple of drinks, and then after that, you're like done. okay, I don't know if he probably would be a mean drunk or like I mean, he's pretty mean without being drunk, but like I'm just saying, overall, that version of J. Jonah Jameson would rub a lot of people the wrong way. At the same time, there were times where like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, like he looked after him. Like, you know, he was selfish in his own ways, but he had like a morally
Right.
justifiable like side to him. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but and I felt like Perry White was meant to be much more of a likable character in the Man of Steel DCEU version.
Right.
Whereas I think the 1978 Perry White felt much more caricaturized, and that's the kind of version that we got in BVS. I would like my Perry White to be much closer to the Man of Steel version. Maybe like correct some of the wrongs of what they did in BVS and onwards. I mean,
Mhm.
that I think
I
they really
mean,
wasted the acting talents of the
remind
first
me
Fishburne.
again, was he
So
in Justice League? I
I
don't
don't know, he
remember.
wasn't.
I don't
He
think he
wasn't.
was, no.
I just don't they probably I mean, you would because by that point Superman was dead, right? So like there's no and well, you know, he's dead at the start of the movie. And then of course Lois Lane is out just on some sort of a leave, like bereavement leave or something. So she's not working. So I don't think there was like a really natural inlet. Although I think there was once I don't know if that was purely for the reshoots. Because we do see her at the office and then like, you know, Martha Kent shows up and they have that whole awkward exchange where it was the Joss Whedon version of the movie. They're at the Daily Planet, but I don't remember really seeing him. Or even if you did see him, it was for a very brief amount of it was basically a cameo.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So yeah, and I don't think they pretty much left all that on the cutting room floor for the Snyder cut version of the movie.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely, I think I mean, again, they're casting great talents for all the roles, like, you know,
Oh,
from
yeah.
Skylar Gisondo to Wendell Pierce now, and of course, we have seen, Rachel Brosnahan and that video that James Gunn posted. Was it I don't know who posted this video on was it I don't know who was the first person to post it, but the whole Three's Company, that little
I think
TikTok,
Brosnahan posted it on
and then it just kinda
Instagram,
circulated
and
around.
then he
It's
reposted
yeah.
it.
It's you know, so it's showing you they've already got great chemistry. I mean, you know, all kinds of talent there.
Yeah, like,
And we were
I'm
looking at the picture
intrigued with
earlier.
how they'll do that because I just trying to get into more DC stuff. I just started watching Superman the Animated Series. I'm curious if they'll, like, bring in the that she used to date, Lex Luthor previously, so
That
I'm
would be a
curious if
fun
they'll do
angle
it.
because I do wonder how does Lex Luthor figure into this plot if he's not the main
I
villain,
have my own theories, like, I've gone
you
over them
know?
quite a few times, but I just I don't know. I'm kinda stoked for this. I think Wendell Pierce will do a good job. What however they'll do it. Like, I feel like it's kinda interesting, like, um, how they do, how they kinda are going in more of that Lawrence Fishburne direction of, like, a black man taking over the role kind of thing. I mean, a similar thing happened with Martian Manhunter. If I remember correctly, he was pretty much his human iteration was pretty much a white guy, and then Phil Morris played him in Smallville, and then they're like, "Oh, I guess he's black now, so sure." Not like that matters. Not like that's a bad thing, because that's what it kind of seemed like with Jimmy Olsen. But I mean, Skylar Gisondo is white, so who knows? And I just
I mean,
noticed
it
that this
just
Great Caesar's ghost. Nice
I mean,
touch there,
ultimately,
guys.
I'm not sure how
But
much that was the conconsideration in terms of,
but
like, whether they
yeah,
wanted to cast for race or they probably were
I don't
thinking, "We
think they
wanna
did.
go
I
for
think they're like, this
like a
guy just so
younger."
happens to have a little bit more melatonins or melanin or whatever the hell the word is. Melatonin's a sleep thing. Melanin. And it's like, yeah, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, he's great. He kind of fits into that personality. Honestly, I
He would
wouldn't
be
mind
the
him saying Great Caesar's ghost at some point. I think that would be, just and they'll
He'll be
be
the
like,
youngest Jimmy Olsen we have seen in a long time too, because like, the
yeah,
one in BVS was not even a real reporter, apparently
we
he worked
don't
for the
talk
CIA.
about that.
We don't talk about that. And then the one,
And
of course,
then,
we
the kid
in
from
Supergirl.
Superman Returns, he was pretty young.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I
But
like
Superman
that
Returns at
whole
this point is, like, almost 20 years old, so,
yeah, I
you know,
like
it's Been a while.
I do honestly, I like how Hollywood Reporter opened with that. That was really funny.
Grit
But
Caesar's ghost. Perry White
I
has
I
been
hope he says
found.
that, like,
Yeah.
maybe once, and then they'll be like, "The fuck did you just say?" He's like, "Sorry, old habit," and then, like, move on. I think that would be kind of funny, like, at
I
least a
think
little.
Wendell Pierce can pull that off. I would
I
love
think he
to
could
see
pull it off,
that.
like, seriously, but
Yes.
if they do, like, a little Marvel-ism where they're like, "What did you
Yes.
just say?" And they'll be like,
Yeah.
Old habit." And
Yep.
then, like, something like that, that could be kinda funny, and I don't know,
Mhm.
I just feel like he kinda has just when I saw Wendell Pierce and when I, like, realized who he was, I'm like, "That just fits." like, can't explain it. He just fits. Like, I even though I have barely seen this man act, I'm like, just looking at him, just feeling his energy, it just fits. It just fits. I'm like, "That this guy feels like a Perry White to me. This guy works," and you know, that's all I gotta say. I don't have a ton to weigh in on because I have seen so little from him. But I you know what? I'm just gonna just say, you know what? He'll probably do a great job. He'll probably do a great job. So, we'll see. But I don't think this is a bad casting decision. I don't think there's has been any bad casting decisions at all. So, I think it all works.
Yeah, I mean, it's overall, when I look at the way the character was introduced first, it wasn't even like in the comics. Like it's in the article here in the Hollywood Reporter. Like they brought him in and like this radio serial of Superman in 1940, and then they talk about how there's been different iterations of the character. You get that
Mhm.
whole harried by his reporter's boss, tough as nails boss. Then you get the more father figure boss, and I obviously have the preference. I like the father figure boss because I really
Yeah,
enjoyed
same
the
here.
Man of Steel iteration, and I think like if they were to go in that direction, you have a lot to build upon, especially in a you're trying to have a more kinder, brighter version of Superman. I think he would that would kind of help to kind of balance that out. And on the big screen, we have seen Jackie Cooper play him in the Christopher Reeves movies. We have been talking about Lawrence Fishburne playing him. And Frank Langella played him in Superman Returns, which it
Yep.
still blows my mind that that movie is almost 20 years old. But then again, Man of Steel is over 10 years old at this point, so it just a thing that happens. Time passes. But yeah, I mean, now we have Wendell Pierce in the role. So just to kind of review here, he's gonna be playing Perry White in the new movie Superman, as it's now known. We're
Superman
yet to
not
see
legacy.
not Legacy, right? Or Superman. This promise this one will be good. I particularly like that version that you came up with.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
um, Guys, let us know. I mean, we can keep talking about this for days. I'm sure we'll get more details on this in the days and weeks to come. The movie is now rolling in Atlanta. They're filming this thing, and it will be in production for probably a few months. Then they've got release date set for July of 2025. So it's still a little over a year out. I'm sure we'll get lots of insight in the coming weeks and months. We really appreciate you guys stopping by and checking us out and our two random dudes talking about Superman. And so we always appreciate the comments. Jay Kells, Hunter Iggy, Fiona stops by. There's Clark Wayne. I love all the comments. We'd love to hear from you
Clark
guys.
Wayne. That's nice. I like that.
Uh, Dude, the names are really really good. I love the comments that we get. I think we got some pretty sweet comment. Like there was one comment from the one when we were talking about we did the whole Super Dune mashup between movie of the week and a DCU Daily, and I think the title of the video says it's Superman or like something like that, and then some just commenter just like it's super in all caps Superman. Like in the now I'm just like that's the only way I can write it is all caps Superman because it's not Superman the movie. If you go on HBO Max or Max, if you go to the app, apparently you search for it, it's Superman the movie. This will simply be known as Superman. Or like if you're a Snyder fan running a movie theater, you're probably gonna just put it on the marquee as hashtag not my Superman. Want to go
Yeah.
see Not My Superman or like
Or
Superman? Like
like
it's
super shit or is it something like that?
although
Like
they may be
or
contractually obligated to not mess the marquee up because Warner Brothers will come after them.
yeah, no,
So
what they'll do is they'll put up Superman and then after hours they'll grab a thing of spray paint and write shit
mhm,
over man so it
mhm.
looks like super shit.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, that definitely could happen.
It's
I
just
mean,
so
the
funny.
yeah,
It's always so funny, where it's like where Snyder fans for years like, oh, you guys can't let go of Christopher Reeve, and now it's like everyone else is like, well, you guys can't get rid of Henry Cavill, so
yeah. I mean,
oh, how the turntables,
tables have turned. Yeah, it's something that, look, ultimately people have a right to remember and,
Of course,
idolize the version of the character they like. I am a big Henry Cavill fan. I know you are a big
oh
Henry
yeah,
Cavill fan. We
of
will
course,
always cherish Man of Steel and those iterations. I mean, regardless of how we feel about the events of the movie, I think the actor himself, Henry Cavill, did a fantastic job with the character, and
definitely
he's off doing other things. He's got Warhammer, is it Warhammer 4000? I feel, and then he's got a new
40,000. Yeah,
40,000, 40,000. There's an extra zero there. He's also, isn't he doing a whole what's his, it's a remake? What's that classic sci-fi franchise they're remaking with him in the lead
Highlander.
of
He's doing
Highlander?
Highlander. He's
Yeah,
doing the next Guy
um,
Ritchie movie, which I'm
Guy Ritchie
excited
movie.
for.
The What was it, the
That looks really good.
unsomething
The
gentleman? I saw
Ministry
the
of
trailer.
Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Gentlemanly
That looks
Warfare, okay.
that looks
Dude,
great.
that movie looks fantastic. So, I mean, look, if you are still not over the whole Henry Cavill not being Superman thing anymore, there's plenty of Henry Cavill to go around. So, like, by all means, you will not have a shortage of Cavill on camera, on screen in the years to come. But as far as Superman goes, not Superman Legacy, just Superman. Wendell Pierce, honest Perry White. We'll be back here talking about more updates as they come. Breaking news, your just analysis of how does he fit into the picture. Let us know in the comments, what version of Perry White would you like to see him play? More of the the hard ass, or would you want to see him a little more of a fatherly figure version of the character? Wendell Pierce, of course, The Wire, Jack Ryan. If you've seen him before, you know he's a fantastic actor. I don't think they can go wrong with the casting here. The talent is there, and I trust James Gunn to pull this off. So we'll see where that goes from here. But up until next time, guys, as we say always, go out there, watch something DC related, come back to us and talk about it. We would love to hear from you. We always love to hear from you. And then until next time, it's been great, John, as always. We'll be back here on
Of
DCU
course.
Daily tomorrow, talking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, as SpongeBob would say. And until next time, we'll see you here on DCU Daily.